Hello, everyone. Today, I want to tell you a powerful story, a story about fear, a story about struggle, and a story about how learning English changed one girl's entire life. If you have a dream, a big dream, to become successful, to travel the world, to get a better job, or to become someone important, then this story is for you because English can change your future. And today you will see how. My name is Sophia. I was born in a small town in Brazil. My family was simple, not rich, not poor, just hardworking people trying to survive. My father worked as a taxi driver. My mother was a school teacher. They worked every single day to give me and my little brother a better life. And from the time I was a little girl, I had only one dream. I wanted to become a doctor. I still remember the exact moment that dream was born. I was only 10 years old. My little brother became very sick one night. He had a very high fever. My parents looked terrified. My mother was crying. My father drove us quickly to the hospital. I sat beside my brother holding his small hand. I was scared. Very scared. Then suddenly, a doctor walked into the room. He looked calm, confident, strong. He smiled gently and said, "Don't worry, I will take care of your son." I watched him carefully. He checked my brother. He gave him medicine. He spoke with confidence and kindness. And after a few hours, my brother became better. The fever disappeared. He was safe. That night, something changed inside me. I looked at that doctor and thought, one day, I want to save lives too. From that moment, becoming a doctor became my biggest dream. But years later, I discovered a painful truth. If I wanted to become a doctor, I needed English, not basic English, real English. Medical books were in English. Research papers were in English. University exams were in English. Even doctors in Brazil needed English. And my English? It was terrible. My school did not teach much English. I knew very small words. Hello. How are you? Good morning. But when I saw a full English paragraph, my brain stopped working. One day in school, my English teacher looked at me and said, "Sophia, please read this sentence." I looked down at the book. The words looked impossible. I could not understand anything. My hands started shaking. I, I don't know, miss, I whispered. Some students laughed. I felt my face become hot. I wanted to disappear. That afternoon, I went home quietly. I locked myself in my room. And for the first time in my life, I asked myself something terrifying. What if my dream never comes true? I sat on my bed thinking about my future. How can I become a doctor if I cannot even understand simple English? I felt hopeless, completely hopeless. That evening, my father came home from work. He looked tired, but when he saw me sitting silently in my room, he knew something was wrong. He sat beside me and asked softly, "Sophia, what happened?" I looked at him with tears in my eyes. "Papa, I want to become a doctor, but my English is terrible. Without English, I cannot study medicine." My father stayed quiet for a few seconds. Then he looked directly into my eyes and said something that changed my life forever. "If English is the problem, then learn English." I looked at him in shock. "But Papa, how?" "We don't have money." He smiled gently. "We may not have a lot, but we have enough to fight for your dream." That night, we sat together as a family, and we talked about one impossible idea. Canada, a country far away from Brazil, a place where people spoke English every single day. My parents believed that if I lived in an English-speaking country, I would finally become fluent. But it was a huge risk. We were only a middle-class family. My parents had some savings, but not much. Studying in another country was expensive, very expensive. Still, my parents were ready to sacrifice everything for my future. Before sleeping that night, my mother held my hand tightly and said, Sophia, we are giving you everything we have. Promise me one thing. Don't give up. I started crying. I promise, Mama. And at that moment, my entire life began to change. A few months later, my parents bought my plane ticket to Canada. It was the most expensive thing they had ever paid for. They used almost all their savings. For my flight, my English school, and my first few months of living there. I still remember the morning I left Brazil. My mother hugged me tightly at the airport. My father tried to smile, but I could see tears in his eyes. I carried only one suitcase, a little money, and a very big dream. During the flight, I looked out the window and thought, my whole life is changing now. After many hours, I finally landed in Toronto, Canada. And honestly, I felt completely lost. Everything looked different. The weather was freezing cold. Back in Brazil, the weather was warm. But in Canada, my hands felt like ice. The people looked different. The streets looked different. Even the air smelled different. But the hardest part was not the weather. It was the English. At the airport, a man walked toward me and asked, Hey, do you need a taxi? I panicked. My brain froze immediately. I understood only one word. Taxi? I smiled nervously and said, Yes. Then he asked, Where to? I had absolutely no idea what he said. I stared at him silently. My heart started beating faster. Finally, I opened my phone and showed him my address. That night, I arrived at my tiny rented room. It was small, cold, and quiet. I sat on the bed alone, and suddenly, I started crying. What am I doing here? I can't understand anyone. How will I survive? For the first time in my life, I felt completely alone. The next morning, I went to my English language school. Students from many countries were there. China, Japan, Mexico, Korea, Brazil. Everyone looked nervous. The teacher entered the classroom smiling. Welcome, everyone. Today we will introduce ourselves. One by one, students stood up and spoke. Then suddenly, the teacher looked at me. Sophia, your turn. My hands started shaking. I stood slowly. My name, Sophia. I from Brazil. I wanted to say more, but my mind became empty. The words disappeared. My throat felt tight. Some students smiled awkwardly. A few quietly laughed. I sat down quickly. I felt embarrassed again. That night, I looked at myself in the mirror and said, No more fear. No more excuses. I will learn English, no matter how difficult it is. That was the moment my real journey began. I created a strict plan for myself. Every single day, I would practice English, speaking, listening, reading, everything. Even if I felt tired, even if I felt embarrassed, and slowly, I started noticing strange things about Canada, things that surprised me every day. For example, students did not wear school uniforms. Some students even wore pajamas outside. Nobody cared. In Brazil, that would feel very strange. Another thing shocked me: personal space. In Brazil, people hug. They stand close together. They touch your shoulder while talking. But in Canada, people liked distance. If you stood too close, they became uncomfortable. And Canadians said sorry all the time, even when something was not their fault. One day, someone stepped on my foot, and they apologized. I found that funny. The weather was also crazy. In 1 hour, it could become sunny, rainy, and snowy, sometimes all in the same day. But the biggest shock was still English. In school back home, I learned textbook English, very formal English, but real Canadians spoke completely differently. They spoke fast, very fast, and they used slang words I had never heard before. People said things like, I'm down for that. That's lit. Want to grab coffee? I felt confused all the time. Sometimes I wondered, did I really study English before coming here? But slowly, I started learning something important. Perfect English was not the goal. Communication was the goal. One day during class, our teacher gave us a writing exercise. I felt confident. This time will be better, I thought. But when she returned my paper, it was full of red corrections. She smiled kindly and said, Sophia, you are translating from Portuguese to English. That's why your sentences sound unnatural. Her words stayed in my mind all day. And later that night, I realized something important. I was not thinking in English. I was translating everything inside my head. And that was slowing me down. So I decided to change my learning style completely. I created a strange method, a method that changed everything. The headphone trick. Every day, I walked around the city wearing headphones. People thought I was talking on the phone, but actually, I was speaking English to myself. I described everything around me. The sky is cloudy. That man is drinking coffee. I am crossing the street. At first, it felt embarrassing. But slowly, something amazing started happening. I became more comfortable speaking English, without fear, without pressure, without waiting for perfection. And for the first time, I finally started believing, maybe, maybe I really can do this. After using the headphone trick for a few weeks, something slowly started changing inside me. I was still making mistakes, still speaking broken English sometimes, but I was no longer terrified of speaking. And honestly, that was a huge victory. Every morning before school, I forced myself to learn 3 new English words. Only 3, not 20, not 50. Just 3 words every day. Then I created simple sentences using those words. For example, exhausted. I feel exhausted after work. Confident. She feels confident speaking English. Opportunity. Canada gave me new opportunities. Little by little, my vocabulary started growing naturally. Then I made another difficult decision. No more subtitles. At first, I watched movies with subtitles in Portuguese, but I realized something important. I was reading, not listening. So one night, I turned subtitles off completely. At first, it felt impossible. People spoke too fast. I missed many words. Sometimes I understood only 10%. But slowly, my ears started adapting. I began recognizing common phrases, common sounds, common expressions. And one day, something incredible happened. I understood an entire short conversation in a movie without subtitles. I became so excited. It felt like my brain was finally waking up. A few days later, I decided to challenge myself again. I walked into a small coffee shop near my school. My heart was beating fast. I looked at the menu for almost 5 minutes, then finally, I walked to the counter. The barista smiled kindly. Hey, what can I get for you today? My brain panicked immediately, but this time I did not run away. I took a deep breath. I would like a cappuccino, please. The barista smiled. Sure. Regular milk or almond milk? And suddenly, I realized something shocking. I understood her perfectly, without translating, without freezing, without panic. Regular milk, please. Perfect, she said. Here you go. Have a great day. And for the first time in Canada, I answered naturally. You too. That was it. A tiny conversation. only a few seconds long, but to me, it felt like winning an Olympic gold medal. I walked out of the coffee shop smiling like a crazy person, because for the first time, English felt real. Not a school subject, not a scary language, but a real tool for communication. That moment changed everything. I finally understood something important. English is not about perfection, it is about confidence. And confidence grows through action, not through fear. But life in Canada was still very difficult. Very difficult. Canada was expensive, much more expensive than I expected. Every month, I had to carefully count every dollar. Rent for my tiny room was $800. Groceries cost around $250. Transportation was expensive too. Phone bills, internet, English classes, everything cost money. To survive, I worked part-time in a small cafe. My life became exhausting. I woke up at 6 in the morning, went to English school, worked in the cafe until late evening, returned home tired, then still studied English before sleeping. Some nights, I felt completely broken. I missed my family terribly. I missed my mother's cooking. I missed hearing Portuguese everywhere. I missed feeling comfortable. One night after work, I opened my bank app, and my heart dropped. I had only $5 left. $5. I sat quietly in my room staring at the screen, and suddenly, I started crying again. Why is this so hard? Am I making a mistake? Should I just go home? For a few minutes, I honestly wanted to quit. But then, I remembered my parents, their sacrifices, their savings, their belief in me. I remembered my promise. I will not give up. So I wiped my tears, took a deep breath, and opened my English notebook again. That night, I studied harder than ever before, and slowly, month after month, my English became stronger. Then one day, something magical happened. I was standing in a grocery store. The cashier looked at me and asked, "Do you need a bag?" And automatically, without thinking, without translating, I answered immediately, "No thanks, I already have one." Then suddenly, I froze. Not because I was scared, but because I realized something incredible. I had just spoken English naturally. My brain did not translate anything. For the first time, I was thinking in English, and honestly, that moment changed my entire life. After that day in the grocery store, everything started changing faster. I was no longer translating every sentence in my head. English started feeling natural. Not perfect, but natural. And honestly, that gave me a lot of confidence. I could now understand people more easily. I could talk to classmates. I could order food comfortably, but there was still one big problem. Native speakers, whenever Canadians spoke quickly, I became nervous again. They used slang, fast expressions, and casual phrases I never learned in school. Sometimes people talked to me and I only smiled. Even when I had no idea what they were saying, I hated that feeling. I felt stupid, small, weak. But deep inside, I knew something important. If I wanted real fluency, I needed real conversations. So one morning, I made a decision. A scary decision. I walked into my favorite coffee shop and told myself, "Today you will have a real conversation in English. No escaping, no pretending, no fear." I stood quietly in line, trying to stay calm. Then suddenly a girl beside me smiled and said, "This line is always so long." My heart started beating fast. This was my moment. I took a deep breath and answered, "Yeah, it's really long." She laughed softly. "I come here every morning and it's always like this." For a second, my brain panicked again. What should I say now? But this time I did not overthink. I simply answered, "Oh, really? I just moved here." Her eyes lit up. "Oh, nice. Where are you from?" "I'm from Brazil." "No way. I've always wanted to visit Brazil." And just like that, we started talking. Normally, naturally, without fear, without translating, without panic. For the first time, I felt like a real English speaker. When I left the coffee shop that day, something inside me had changed forever. I finally believed in myself and confidence became my biggest weapon. After that, I wanted to improve even faster. I did not want to only speak English, I wanted to sound natural too. So I started using a powerful method, the shadowing method. Every day I watched English videos and TV shows. Whenever I heard a sentence, I paused the video, then copied the exact pronunciation, the same emotion, the same rhythm, the same speed. For example, if an actor said, "Oh my God, that's insane," I repeated it exactly the same way, again and again. At first it felt strange, but after 1 month, my pronunciation improved a lot. People started understanding me more clearly and slowly my accent became smoother too. I also started carrying a small notebook everywhere. Every time I made an English mistake, I wrote it down, then corrected it. For example, instead of saying, "I am agree," I learned to say, "I agree." That small notebook became one of my best teachers because I stopped repeating the same mistakes. But one thing helped me more than anything else, Canadian friends. At first, I was too shy to talk to local people, but I forced myself to change. I joined free student events, I used language exchange apps, I started talking more with coworkers at the cafe, and slowly I made real friends. The more time I spent around native speakers, the more natural my English became. But even with better English, life was still difficult. Very difficult. I was always tired, always working, always studying, always worried about money. Sometimes I felt emotionally exhausted. I missed my family deeply. I missed home. One night, I looked at old photos of my parents on my phone and suddenly I started crying. I wanted to hug them. I wanted to hear my mother's voice in person. But flights were too expensive, so I stayed in my small room alone, quietly chasing my dream. And every difficult moment taught me something important. Success is lonely sometimes. Growth is painful sometimes. But pain changes people. And slowly I was becoming stronger than the girl who first arrived in Canada. 1 year later, my English was completely different. I could speak comfortably, understand movies, talk with friends, and even joke in English. Sometimes I stopped in the middle of conversations and thought, wow, is this really me? The girl who once cried because she could not read one sentence was now living her life in English. But my biggest dream was still waiting for me, medical school. To become a doctor in Canada, I needed to pass the IELTS exam. And honestly, that exam terrified me. The reading passages were long and difficult. The writing section felt impossible sometimes. And the speaking test made me nervous. I kept imagining the examiner judging every mistake. But this time I was different. I was stronger now. So I created another strict routine. Every single day I practiced English seriously. I wrote essays, read medical articles, recorded my speaking, listened to podcasts, reviewed vocabulary again and again. Some days I felt confident. Other days I felt hopeless, but I never stopped. Finally, the exam day arrived. I walked into the testing center with shaking hands. Students sat quietly around me. Everyone looked nervous. I closed my eyes for a moment and whispered to myself, "Sophia, you did not come this far to fail. You worked for this." Then the test began. Hours later, it was finally over, and honestly, I had no idea if I passed. The waiting was painful. Every day felt slow. Then one morning, I opened my email. My hands were shaking badly. I clicked the results and froze. I passed, I passed. Tears filled my eyes immediately. I covered my mouth and started crying. Not sad tears, happy tears, proud tears. For the first time in years, I truly felt proud of myself. I called my parents immediately. My mother started crying on the phone. My father kept saying, "I knew you could do it." That moment changed everything. Because with my IELTS score, I finally applied to medical university in Canada. And after months of waiting, I received the acceptance letter. I still remember opening that email. Congratulations, Sophia Williams. You have been accepted. I screamed so loudly my roommate thought nothing terrible happened. But honestly, that was one of the happiest days of my life. Still, medical school was not easy. Not even close, the textbooks were extremely advanced. Professors spoke using complicated medical English. Every lecture felt intense. Sometimes I studied until 3 in the morning. Completely exhausted, but this time I never doubted myself. Because I remembered something important. If I learned English from zero, I could survive anything. So every day I kept pushing forward. I recorded lectures and replayed them at night. I created flashcards for medical vocabulary. I joined study groups. I practiced presentations again and again. And slowly, year after year, I improved. Until finally, graduation day arrived, I walked across the stage wearing my doctor's coat. The audience clapped loudly. My parents were sitting in the crowd crying. And when I received my diploma, I looked up quietly and thought, we did it. This is for you, Mom and Dad. After graduation, I got my first job at a hospital in Toronto. And when I received my first salary, I could not believe it. $8,000. I remembered the nights when I had only $5 left. The nights I cried alone in my tiny room. The nights I wanted to quit. And now I was finally living the life I dreamed about. But the best part was not the money. It was helping people. One day, a little girl came into the hospital crying. She looked scared, so I held her hand gently and said, "Don't worry, sweetheart. I'll take care of you." And suddenly I remembered my little brother and the doctor who inspired me years ago. At that moment, I realized something beautiful. My dream had become real. I was no longer just an English learner. I was Dr. Sophia Williams, and I earned that life through hard work. So listen to me carefully. Your life can change too, but you must stop making excuses. Stop waiting for motivation. Stop being afraid of mistakes. Learn English every single day. Speak even when you feel embarrassed. Practice even when you feel tired because confidence is built through action, not excuses. One day, your future self will look back and thank you for not giving up, for fighting for your dreams, for believing in yourself, and trust me, that feeling is priceless. Today, I live in a beautiful apartment in downtown Toronto. Every morning, I wake up feeling grateful, not because life is perfect, but because I remember where I started. I remember the scared girl from Brazil, the girl who could not understand simple English, the girl who cried alone in a tiny room, the girl who almost gave up many times. And now, that same girl speaks English every day, travels freely, works as a doctor, and helps save lives. Sometimes life still feels unreal to me. I drive through the city at night and think, wow, this used to be only a dream. I can now help my parents financially. I send them money. I buy them gifts. I take them on vacations. And every time my mother smiles proudly at me, my heart feels full because years ago they sacrificed everything for me. And now I can finally give something back. But listen carefully. None of this happened because I was special. I was not the smartest student. I was not born rich. I was not naturally confident. I simply refused to quit. That was the difference. Most people quit too early. They feel embarrassed once and stop speaking. They make one mistake and give up. They feel uncomfortable and run away. But growth only happens inside uncomfortable situations. That is the truth. You must train yourself to become stronger. You must force yourself to improve. Nobody can do it for you. Not your parents, not your teachers, not your friends. Only you can change your life. I know many people say accept yourself the way you are, but honestly, I disagree. Never accept weakness, never accept laziness, never accept a small life when you know you can become more. Push yourself, challenge yourself, become stronger every year. That is how lives change. When I was struggling with English, I could have created many excuses. English is too difficult. I don't have enough money. I'm too shy. I'm not smart enough. But excuses never create success. Work creates success. Discipline creates success. Consistency creates success. Every single day, even when nobody is watching, even when you feel tired, even when progress feels slow, keep going. Because one day your hard work suddenly becomes visible and your entire life changes. If you are watching this right now, then maybe this story is not an accident. Maybe you also want a better future. Maybe you also have a dream deep inside your heart, a dream you are scared to chase. But let me tell you something important. Fear disappears when action begins. So start now. Not tomorrow, not next year today. Speak English today. Read English today. Watch English videos today. Practice speaking even if your voice shakes. Make mistakes proudly because mistakes mean you are growing. And please remember this. Fluency does not come from perfection. It comes from daily practice. Small steps every day create massive change over time. 5 years ago, I was scared to say one sentence in English today. I save lives speaking that same language, so if I can change my life, you can too, but only if you stop waiting and start working. One day, you will look back at your old self and smile because the person you are becoming right now will make your future proud. So stand up, believe in yourself, fight for your dreams, and never stop improving your life. Because trust me, when you finally become the person you dreamed about, the feeling is unbelievable. Now go start your journey today.